Welcome back to Black and Brown Crowns. I'm your host, Cheyenne, and today we'll be speaking to Dr. Kathyanne about how to become a social worker. Thank you, Dr. Kathyanne, for joining me today. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to be on to educate our young women out there about my field and, impart some knowledge about it.
Well, without further ado, let's get started. What was going through your mind when you finally said, I want to be a social worker?
So many different journeys. So I originally started undergrad as bio pre-med. And then I walked into a psychology class with an amazing professor, Dr. Lundquist, who literally did like this whole abnormal psychology, was like in a bathrobe, switching the stove. Like she did this whole theatrics around abnormal psychology and the different things that show up for people. And I was just captivated. And that first sparked my interest in just like understanding why people do the things that they do and the mind. And at that time, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, like most undergrads and people in college. I just knew I didn't want to do bio pre-med anymore. The long hours and stuff was getting to me. And so I kind of just graduated with a degree. Like, especially as minority people, we're not going back home and we need to finish this journey and get it done. So I graduated with a health service human behavior degree. And then trickled into like, okay, maybe I'll do physical therapy, maybe I'll do OT, like the traditional things people tell you. And I started volunteering with my sorority, helping out. And the main important part, I have a minor in gerontology, which is the study of old people. Because I said I would never work with young people. And right now I'm a high school social worker. So crazy journeys of life because it explains the next part. So when I started volunteering with my sorority, I started working with young girls and I was with their GEMS program and I loved it. And I realized, unlike working with the older population that I had currently been working with, it was like right at the threshold of when you could reach them. And I remembered my high school experience and having a counselor who kind of like shifted the whole trajectory of my life and kind of like impart knowledge on me about like how to go away and, what I needed to do to be able to afford it. And I was like, if I could catch you at that moment, which was so critical in my own life, and that I was seeing with these young people, that would feel fulfilling to me, would feel like something that I wanted to do. So I started looking at roles in schools. So I looked at school psychologists, I looked at guidance counseling, and I looked at social workers. And I would kind of like interview people within the field. And what I wanted to do, that actual one-on-one interaction, I found that in social work. At the time, and I know the role has changed around a lot and it depends on the schools, and I have a little bit more knowledge than I had back then. But at the time, it was guidance counselors kind of degrading. And college access. School psychologist was more testing. So I felt like the social workers was really in the nitty gritty, into the grind of the day. And so that kind of funneled me towards becoming a school social worker. And I went back to school because I think we're going to go up to that. But one of the requirements is that you have to have at least your bachelor's. But at the time, it was the beginning of the shift in social work. So social work is looking towards becoming more recognized and accredited. And so how was showing that in that direction, you needed like a master's degree at that time, especially in New York, to really get a good job and to also get the license certification as well. So I immediately entered a master's program to become a social worker. It was a
So,
good answer.
so just to be sure, you have to have a bachelor's and then a master's program, or do you have to have a bachelor's and then do a certificate and then master's? Just
Okay,
to be
so
clear.
the struggle with social work is that every state is different. So I will speak specifically to New York State. So in New York State, I think the journey began like around 2007, but really cemented in 2013. They really wanted to become more recognized, like how nurses added the RN and the different stuff to their field to make it become more professional. physical therapy, went to the doctorate level, because if you look at times like before the 2000s, those fields weren't like that. So I feel like social work is following that same blueprint in which they want to, it comes down to people recognizing that this is a profession, and thus it recognize that your salary should equal the profession that you're in. The licensure is really more if you want to do direct therapy or clinical, what we call clinical therapy. So you don't have to have your L, even though I feel more and more jobs are moving towards that to kind of cement it better to have the license, but really you need your master's. On the bachelor's level, it's very hard to get a job. It's kind of like graduating with a psychology degree. You're talking your way into positions, but it doesn't really cement your position.
I know that
And
for sure.
so with that, the master's kind of cements your position. Like, yes, you're a master's social worker, you're certified in this field. So,
Got you. Were there any scholarships or internships while you were rather going through your undergrad or through your master's program that you utilized?
definitely. So I know on the bachelor's, so since I didn't do my social work degree from a bachelor's level, I didn't have the internship component, but I know people who did do social work on the bachelor's level and they had the internship component. On the master's level, it's required. You have to do 2 years. Your first year is usually like a case management, first tier. And then the second level is like your clinical, when you're learning diagnosis and things like that. I was lucky enough because of and this is actually something I want to stress, know your value. So when I started my master's program, I was overseeing a group home night shift as their behavioral specialist. So I refused to do a case management first year internship. I'm literally training people in my position to do what you want me to go do for free. So I was able to advocate for myself through my experience to argue my way into a second year placement, which helped me for my second year placement to kind of explore other things, which I did like a policy flow. I did my master's at NYU. So there was like different tracks you can do. And that allowed me to kind of see two different parts of the track. So always know your value and your worth. You don't have to follow the pre-scripted way they may be showing it. If you know your value, you can argue your way through. And I think that's something we're not taught. We're kind of taught to go with the flow. And I would speak with like classmates and things, and they're like, yeah, I do this at my job. So why are you doing it at an internship? There is also what I call sneaky scholarships. I literally ran across the scholarship like walking down in the basement one day. And on the wall, like it wasn't publicized, it was just like literally on the wall, hey, do you work for an agency that takes interns for this school? And I was like, wait a minute, I work for an agency that has interns for this school. I automatically got $5,000 just off of that. So it's sometimes
Wow.
asking around or maybe even looking of those hidden scholarships. What I've also learned in my journey as being a school social worker and helping students find scholarships, those little neighborhood ones come a long way. And the stack of those little ones, everyone's going for the big ones. Everyone's going for the Coca-Cola, these huge scholarships. But the small ones, like I'm going to name like a random area, Laurenton, Queens, Town Bishop Scholarship. Not a lot of people apply to them. They don't know about it. They're not as strict on the GPA requirements and things like that because they want to give this money that they fundraise for away. Sorority groups and church groups. There's always these other little tinier pockets of money that you can get that I think sometimes we miss out on because we're not fully thinking about them. They're the little pocket ones that are within your community.
So looking to your community, whether if it's like churches or I know that some grocery stores may have them as well.
Mm-hmm.
Some smaller schools, things like that for scholarships.
Yep.
Great. You mentioned earlier that there are different routes to take as a social worker. Can you suggest some?
I think it's really go down. So I was once told by an amazing professor that no one goes into social work because they want to save the world. People go into social work because you went through some stuff in your life and you never want no one to ever experience that again. So you're trying to avoid the factors of, the negatives that are in the world. And I think that is the core root of what track you end up taking. So, we have social workers who are in healthcare. We have social workers who are child protective services. We have social workers who work in movies and now, which I think is amazing and great, social workers who are following athletes and helping them through the different emotional stuff that it is to be an athlete in the American athletic world, or to be a sports athlete. So I think it really comes down to the core of what is driving you to do it, and then following that track. And I've seen people do some really unique and amazing things with it. I think it's not limited to your imagination. It's getting a degree. When you go to the school, it is a Eurocentric mind frame. So it's very like tailored. But we also know that our society is very diverse culturally. There's so many different pieces that we don't learn in school that is brought into social work that have, as the years have went on, we're beginning to see that, especially since COVID, because people have been home and really exploring on their dreams and their goals and really transforming the field. I think the field will not look the way it did 5 years ago, the way it did 10 years ago as we continue on. It's more diverse than it was when it started. It was started by kind of like older white women as like their charity project. Oh, I'm going to help the homes in the different places. And as it has evolved, the face has evolved as well. And more people from oppressed groups have entered the field, the plethora of oppressed groups. And so that led to a different way of thinking, and then using the knowledge that we learn. And then, what we do on it, we grow on it, we build on it and make it our own. And I'm definitely seeing that in the field. So I'm excited for where social work is going.
You are answering all of my questions that I haven't even gotten into, but thank you. Well, I was going to mention a mentor. Like, did you ever have a mentor while going through the motions of trying to figure out what you wanted to do as a social worker?
I've had maybe not so much specific social workers. I have social work mentors as well, but I think that mentors come in the form of like the background trainer leaders that see in you what you don't even see in yourself. So to give like one small example, when I worked at the VA, I was like a unit clerk, and I would work at the front desk, and the nurse manager took like such an interest in me. She would have me in meetings that I didn't even have no business being in, like kind of like grooming you to go up. And I remember like her just imparting so much knowledge about like what it is to run through structures and systems. So I would say in the regards to mentors is that like, don't pigeonhole yourself to just only look at mentors as people who can be in your field. Because a lot of my mentors are not specifically from my field, but the knowledge they taught me helped increase the work that I did. Just build on it. And then I have a sister circle, and I'm very big on sister circles. So I'm a part of a vision board group. It's like 6 women. We've been meeting for about 5 or 6 years now, once a month. And we literally just feed into each other about how we can grow and build. I remember when I even wanted to first do my master's, I was going through my sorority, and all of them were in their masters, and I was like the third oldest on the line, and I'm like, tag, I'm behind. I need to get some fire underneath me. I need to build bigger than this, because I can't be the only one here with my masters. And I think if you surround with your people who are doing big things, like every time I go to a chapter meeting, every time do I go to women events, I'm like, I'm not doing enough. And that has its negative, but I think it does push me to be bigger than what I am. And then having those conversations. I love being around older people because the knowledge that they can impart to you and the things that they tell you and the ways to skip certain hurdles is just so valuable. And I think sometimes we are so focused on what we know, we forget that a lot of the knowledge of the people coming up because they've been through it. And so I'm always surrounded by empowering just people that are pushing themselves further and further, no matter age, because we can learn from the young as well. The young teach me a lot. But I think mentorship would be my core sisterhoods and the people around me that really push me to be bigger than what I am.